Speech leaked. Poor pitiful Meghan. Believe that the UK still welcomes Sussex.
Oh, poor pitiful Meghan. That's what we're supposed to say, right? So back in the UK this week, one is very curious which sympathy card Meghan might pull out next. I mean, every single interview that woman does just focused on this whole woe is me narrative. It's Meghan really so out of touch with the struggles that ordinary people face that she failed to understand that she is coming across as so self-obsessed. That is the real reason that Meghan is so intent on playing the victim all the time. She expects all of us to feel so sorry for her while she's sitting up there in her multi-$1 million house surrounded by security and staff. How does Meghan survive a single day? In all honesty though, I'm curious if Meghan could really believe that she is so hard done by and that your normal person on the street is going to have sympathy for her. And I am not denying that Meghan has had her own struggles in life. We all have. But still, most of us just bravely carry on and we deal with the hand that is dealt to us. We don't whine about it like Meghan does. And I'm sure it was a huge culture shock for her marrying into the royal family, particularly because I guess she thought that it involved swanning around a palace and putting on pretty dresses for film premieres. But the reality is, being a royal is pretty hard work. They have to spend a lot of time doing things like cutting ribbons at a new sewage processing plant and somewhere like Stevenage. I'm sure that would have been a culture shock for most people, but most people would have kept those feelings to themselves. See, by most people's standards, that would hardly constitute trauma. But the truth is that Harry really has suffered trauma. He lost his mother at a very young age, and that is horrible. So why is Meghan, as one source put it this weekend, constantly looking back at how awful it was to briefly be a royal? You see, the past is in the past. We've got to put it there and we've got to keep going. Now, that's not to say that we need to sweep everything under the rug, far from it. But there does come a time when if you cannot move on, then your past begins to define who you are. At some point you've just got to let go, or at least put in some real work to deal with the past so that doesn't end up consuming you. But with Meghan, there is something interesting going on. It's something that I've seen in other people. So I have a good friend who worked in a private clinic with some very wealthy patients. Some were even flying in on their private jets just to make the appointment. I mean, these people were incredibly privileged, but if my friend spoke with them, there were some people who seemed obsessed with feeling injured, slighted, maligned. They were hypersensitive, and they were always trying to make themselves look like victims. My friend had before worked with very poor people, and so she found this absolutely bizarre because she told me that the poor people were always just looking at how to better themselves. They were not so obsessed with always being victims like these really wealthy people were. So my friend basically came to the conclusion that it was their wealth and their privilege that caused them to want to play the victim card all the time. They had a lot of privilege, but unless they also achieved some pretty amazing things, they were going to be viewed as failures. Indeed, instead of feeling freed thanks to their privilege was like golden handcuffs. But the problem was, nobody really felt a lot of sympathy for these people. These patients of my friend were not even old. They were in their 20s and 30s, and their parents were rich and famous, and they were trying to say that they were truly victims in life. They just failed to see that, in fact, the world was handed to them on a silver platter. It seemed like they completely took for granted the fact that they didn't have to work or have any talent to get where they were in life. Thanks to their toxic combination of overinflated self-ego and self-entitlement, they just felt bitter, and they were also shocked that not everything always went their way. Now the rest of us are just used to not getting our way because most of the time we probably don't get our way. But instead of just writing that off as being part of life, they use that as evidence that they were the victims in the whole story. So basically they found that they could absolve themselves of life's problems if they just attach themselves to this victim mentality. It gave them a good excuse for why things were going wrong, or why things didn't work out exactly how they wanted things to. Instead of taking responsibility, they could always just point the finger at somebody else. There was always somebody else they could blame. Now, no matter how rich, privileged and well-connected someone is, life can feel difficult at times, of course. But it is so important to just have a healthy perspective on things and understand that this is just part of life. I just cannot wrap my head around why someone who is allegedly so intelligent seems to really struggle to understand that, and so she just makes herself seem increasingly tone deaf. Meghan really wants us to all believe that she's the victim of all kinds of injustice and that she's battling against everybody. Instead, she just makes herself look self-indulgent and out of touch. And a royal expert has also warned that Meghan's attendance as keynote speaker in the UK in a few days will be like watching her walk through a landmine area when she is too blinded with revenge to heed the warning sign. Meghan's like a crazed murderer on the run, and when she's finally cornered, she will be ready to destroy her assailants, even if it means that she's gonna go down with them and the devastation that she leaves in her wake. The expert goes on to explain, I fear for Prince William's safety because the maggot only needs one crazy armed squatty prepared the sacrifice of his drug-diluted life to bring William down. It's her only purpose for staying with just Harry to be the future Queen of Jezebel. So, a bit of funny news that I got to share with you all. Apparently Meghan and Harry felt so ashamed after the Duchess of Cambridge flu commercial when she went to Scotland with her 2 young kids that reportedly now the Montecito malcontents have flown to the UK on. And another thing, we know they are not gonna fly back to California commercial. I mean, there's only so much that a royal couple like them can be expected to endure. And their little fans are always quick to deny any kind of criticism. I was actually shocked when the Mirror praised Meghan for handing a woman who was coughing a bottle of water. Now that woman was sitting behind her, but still she was one of the Archwell team that was accompanying the Sussex as while they were going to the UN Mandela Day talks. But still, it's such a normal gesture to hand that woman a bottle of water, but to accept the bottle back? Oh, absolutely not. I mean, would you be willing to drink water from a bottle that you shared with somebody else, particularly if they had coughing symptoms? Now, maybe if they were on some kind of desert island and that was the very last bottle of water they had. Okay, but someone coughing at a conference without wearing a mask? Man, Meghan really should have covered her mouth and headed straight to the restroom. And you, do you agree with the views in my video? If yes, don't be afraid to like and share my video with anybody else who would enjoy it.